Let's give a big KetoCon welcome to Reed Davis. Let's go.
All right. Thank you guys for being here. Who's fitness minded or wellness and fitness minded? Okay, then you probably remember a guy named Jack LaLanne, right? I remember he was being interviewed a while ago, and they asked him, so Jack, what's your real secret to being so fit? Now he's 93 and he's still, busting some muscles and things like that. And he says, well, he goes, I do three things. I go into the gym every day, I swim every day, and I have sex almost every day. And it kind of blew the young interviewers' minds and things. But later they were talking to his wife, and they said kind of like, hey, Mrs. LaLanne, your husband says he swims every day, and he works out in the gym every day, and he has sex almost every day. And she goes, yeah, that's true. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday, almost on Wednesday. So the trick is to live a long and healthy life. I'm here to share as much as I can that would be useful to you and something you can walk away with. I want to give you some very rich content. Now, something I did almost 25 years ago is learn how to do the brain-body diagram. And so what's that big organ up in your skull that allows you to think called? Well, yeah, it's the brain. And the reason I ask it that way, what's that organ that allows you to think called, is because I did this in the office for 10 years. And one time a man and his wife were there, and I said, what's that thing that allows you to think called? And he just pointed at her. So now I say, what's that organ in your skull? So how does the brain communicate with the body? Well, various ways, through the blood, of course, through the nerves, through chi, lots of energy floating around the body. And the purpose of all that is function. Again, I learned this 25 years ago, and it really turned me on to how every single person in this room, every individual on the planet can take some responsibility and control for their own health if they learn this. That the purpose of all of that communication throughout the body is function. And you don't have to teach any of your cells what their job is. They're designed perfectly. They know the cell knows what its job is. So that's what we would call normal. It's working at about 100%. And it doesn't matter if it's the ovaries, pancreas, adrenals, liver, testes if you got them. And it's designed for perfect function. That's what normal is. And that would be a body in a state of ease, or known medically as homeostasis. And besides this balance that we all have at every cell and tissue level, it's important to realize that you've also got vital reserve. That gives us the strength to go on when you are struggling. So if you're here sitting and breathing, you have some vital reserve, maybe a little less or more than someone else, but that's what we depend on. So as naturopathic practitioners and people who are just into wellness, these are the things we think it's important to understand. But is that how people show up in your office? No, they come in with these things called symptoms. But how could they possibly occur in a healthy person? If you're functioning normally at 100%, the body's in a state of ease, plenty of vital reserve left over, why would you have any symptoms? Well, the truth is that there must be some form of dis-ease, right? Again, this is what I learned 25 years ago that turned me on to that I could do something useful in the world to help others. So I hope you'll listen with that same intention. And if there's a disease process, yeah, symptoms might show up. But what causes the disease process? There must be some cells, some tissue, some organ, some system somewhere that's malfunctioning or dysfunctioning. So this is a functional level, a way of looking at things. And what we have learned to term that as simply is metabolic chaos. Multiple causes, multiple dysfunctions, multiple cells, tissues, organs, or systems not working. And so that's an easy word, easy thing to remember, right? Metabolic chaos. But back to the story here. So people come in with these symptoms, and what they want is relief care. It's okay to want relief care. If you're in pain, if you're having hot flashes and night sweats, of course you want a little something for that. But it's probably not going to if all you do is relieve the symptoms. Let's say you find some pills that happen to work pretty good. Lots of people prescribing those and selling those, even here in this hall that we have. And if those aren't working, well, the next step is generally surgery. Anyone here had any parts removed? You don't have to answer. But you don't get extra parts when you're born. You actually need them all. There's a reason you have 2 kidneys and these sorts of things. 10 fingers, 10 toes, right? So relief care is not a bad thing. But the truth is that symptoms occur because something is wrong. They're a sign that something's wrong. And there's no such thing as a normal symptom. And I don't have time to go into all the stories I've learned in the 25 years, but they're amazing ones. And you may be sitting here having been told that something that you're suffering from is a normal thing. And I want to guarantee you, that's how you feel about it. It's not normal. And so those symptoms might go away or decrease with the relief care. Again, I'm not against relief care, but they will often come back with a vengeance. You'll need stronger medicine or supplements or whatever it might be, therapy of some sort. And if that doesn't happen, then they'll appear as new symptoms somewhere else. So our paradigm, if you will, it says FDN paradigm there because that stands for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. That's what I teach. And our focus is on resolving the metabolic chaos while providing perhaps some intelligent relief care. Now, the distress, as opposed to eustress, there's good and bad stress. The distress that I noticed in the office starting in 1999 was either some kind of mental, emotional, perceived thing that was causing distress in the body, causing malfunction in the body, or biomechanical trauma. And we had chiropractic and acupuncture and massage and nutrition. We had a couple doctors and osteopath and such. And man, a lot of them came in just with aches and pains. That was causing dysfunction in the rest of their body, as was what I learned, what I took over and kind of became the guy in the office, was for the chemical, biochemical, and environmental stressors. And we call them the hidden stressors. You'll see why in a minute. And what you just notice is that as soon as we started doing this sorting out of metabolic chaos, we come across corrective care. We're out of relief. Everyone should feel better pretty soon. But when we identify healing opportunities, that's your operative word. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a treatment of anything specific. It's just identifying what's truly wrong in the body and then applying the general principles of health building. That's when normal function's restored. And as you see on the diagram there, that when you restore function back to normal, you use that innate intelligence, things equalize. The disease process just dies by itself. And of course, symptoms go away. And this happens automatically when you follow the right steps. You have to know which steps to take. And then you can enter this period of what we call self-maintenance or self-care. Relief and correction can take the advice and working with an expert. But I don't believe anyone's here by accident. And I'm actually going to do a survey in just a sec. But you're here probably for your own health, or you're here to learn how to help other people, or maybe even both. And so that would be wonderful. And again, I promise to try to deliver as much value as I can, drawing upon 25 years experience in the field. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're interested, please grab your cameras now. It will not hurt my feeling if you actually get your cell phone out. Normally it might, but I want you to get your scan. And the reason is this: there's 4 questions that you'll be asked, and they will help me in determining what my talk should be about in the future. So you're going to help me, but you also get to take a look at yourself and maybe help yourself and get into a bit. We're going to give away something. It's one of our advanced courses, and it's probably a $1,500 value. We're going to give 4 people here that for free if you fill out the survey. So please go ahead and scan the code, and you might be a big winner. We're even going to announce the winners at the end of this thing. So who am I? I'll just tell you, I'm Reed Davis. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. In other words, all of that stuff written after my name. I'm here because I just really care and am dedicated to helping people. And it came from being a do-gooder my whole life. From the time I was walking little old ladies across the street as a Boy Scout at 10, I've always felt that in my heart. That would be a great way to make a living, too, is to help others and get paid to do it, frankly. And so I was first in environmental law. My training at University of San Diego was environmental law and conservation. So I was working in that field, and I was doing pretty good for myself. Matter of fact, I was the senior vice president of a company, and we were helping the planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees. And something occurred to me in the late 20th century, and that was, what about people, including me? I mean, I didn't want anything sneaking up on me. You know, you hear people, their first symptom is a fatal heart attack. Oh, yeah, they were fine before that. Well, I would argue they weren't fine. But so that was my motivation to get into health and wellness, was how bad the environment was killing everything else, and what about us, including me. But I'd never really been to the doctor before, other than some sports injuries and maybe some dental work. But I didn't know. And when I started this clinic, the wellness center in Southern California, I was blown away by something. Like immediately, I started taking nutrition classes and personal training and myofascial body work and all these other different things. Long time ago, really getting into it. And the thing I noticed about everybody walking into clinic, this is amazing, they'd already been to 6 or 8 or 10 different practitioners. And where's that? Had no idea why. Again, I hadn't been to a doctor for anything, you know, chronic or long-term or that kind of thing. So I'd be out riding my motorcycle and thinking about this, and I thought there's something really wrong here. And I'm not blaming doctors for what was going on. There was something really wrong, and it was that the people were putting their health in someone else's hands. I thought, why are they doing that? Jumping from, oh, maybe this one will help me, maybe that one will help me. So they're caught in this cycle of trial and error. And I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time to be able to start running laboratory work. It was considered very alternative at the time, even quackery to some. And I've seen that same alternative become complementary in the last quarter century. Then it became integrative. Now they call it functional medicine, and I'm going to tell you it's still evolving. But in the day, it was about running these alternative labs, getting to the underlying causes and conditions, and then giving people things to do that they were in control of themselves, not take a pill and come back in 3 months. So another thing that I determined, because there was so much suffering going on, and I knew that I could, again, do well for myself as it did well for others, I was out riding my bike and had this crazy, crazy idea. And I decided I was going to be the last person they needed to see. I refused to be number 9 out of 10 people or number 6 out of 14 people that they had to see to get better. I was going to be the last one. And the functional lab work was going to be my thing, and I made it my thing. And anyone that came in the office, I was running labs and running labs. Again, thousands of labs on thousands of people over a 10-year period. And guess what? I noticed a few things. So I want to also give a little bit of cred to the physicians who were working then as they work now to relieve symptoms and to do some good in the world. Everyone coming in the office kind of blaming that my doctor doesn't know, he doesn't understand me. Raise your hand if you've ever been told or know someone who was told there's nothing wrong with you from your physician, right? And because there's nothing medically wrong with you. They're not seeing anything that's in their wheelhouse that they can treat. So it wasn't their fault. No, that's where the gap is. There was this huge gap, that's what this photo is, between what people were going for and what they really needed to be doing. So it's never, and it wasn't at the time the doctor's fault. Imagine a ladder up against one of these walls. Well, you don't want your ladder on the medical wall and climb that if your problem isn't medical. So all these chronic downward spiraling degenerative conditions that we were seeing in the office weren't medical conditions. Matter of fact, again, they've been told that there's nothing wrong with you in a lot of cases. Or here's something for the symptoms only, which does nothing, as you've seen from the previous diagram. There was nothing to get them to progress, nothing handling the disease and the malfunction. So their ladder was on the wrong wall. And for you who are here for yourselves, or if you're listening to this, trying to get some tips on how you might help clients, they got to get their ladder on the right wall. And you can be that wall. And so that's the wall that I spent 25 years building. And Here's another thing I noticed. Who's heard of the word root cause? Okay, well, root cause, root cause. I used to have that under my name. I get to the root cause until, guess what? After running thousands of labs on thousands of people, I realized there was never one. There was never one root cause. And here's the other thing no one seems to consider. Those root causal factors are having an effect upon each other. And a lot of that's not singly measurable. Now, I teach a course in lab work. I know a thing or two about labs, saliva, urine, blood, stool. And sometimes there is no test to find that root cause. And there's no test that will tell you all the interactions going on between causal factors. So that's why I called it metabolic chaos. I dropped that term root cause. There's too many. They're having an effect on each other. You look at the picture. There's all these causal factors creating the rings. The rings are going out and bashing into each other, creating multiple chaos looks on the water. So that's the truth. That's how it's really working. And that's why people were seeing 6 and 8 and 10 different practitioners spending tons of money and not getting to the answer that they were looking for. So here's the other thing, and this took me 10 years to figure out. It takes me 10 seconds to say, but the hidden stressors that were most important, that were able to help every single person in that office coming in, I would say 100% of the people that didn't have a serious medical problem were helped by this. And it was looking at the hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous systems. And it spells hidden. And it took me 10 years to figure that out. But I'm giving it to you that if you have a health problem, or if you have clients, this is their health problem. It's that they have hidden stressors and dysfunctions. And in my opinion, only through the lab work, running the right saliva, urine, and blood and stool tests, then once you figure out what those healing opportunities are, you can apply wellness principles. They likely don't need drugs or, God forbid, surgery. Again, no one gets extra parts. So then what? Well, it's real simple. You realize that no matter what their symptoms are, and no matter what their lab values are, those aren't the problems. And this is coming from a guy who teaches a course in lab work. Lab values are not the problem. They're all a result of the problem, which is the underlying chronic stress-related dysfunctions and disease processes that sometimes are so far upstream that there's not even a test for them. Again, I teach a course in lab work. But if you use the right functional labs, you can get close enough to those causal factors to have an effect upon them. Now, this is clinically proven. It's now a system that I've taught to thousands of practitioners around the world, and they're using this successfully. Everyone kind of loves being an FDN in the community. Am I right, Elizabeth?
You're absolutely right, Reed.
Hey, thank you. So I have some staff here that'll help me and keep my spirits up, of course. So guess what? You don't guess. There's no such thing, and you've heard this before, test, don't guess. A lot of companies use this to sell a product. They'll say, well, test, and then you'll know, and then you'll know you need our product. And that kind of, I'm not talking about that. And I'm not talking about guessing which test through the sounds like method. People are using that method, and it doesn't work. Well, if you say, well, I run test too, Reed. I run test too. Well, how do you decide which test to run? Well, I listen to the person, and then it sounds like thyroid, or it sounds like it's irritable bowel, or it sounds like, oh, you must have a parasite. Well, if you have a parasite, it's not the problem. It's the result of an unhealthy immune system, and on and on and on. So these are the kind of things we think about when we compare what people get to do. They could use the science of intervention, and there's plenty of it, and it's good stuff. So people know there's people with products and gizmos and devices, and I've been to plenty of biohackers conferences and you name it, and seen the science of the intervention, and it's true. You can count on that guy knows what he's talking about, that therapy, as it applies to something going on with the person. What I want to know about is the person. And so the science that we use, we call it the science of the individual. Everyone's different. You have to respect that biochemical individuality. Now, quickly, I'm going to go through a fairly difficult if you've never seen it before, chart here. We have people with metabolic chaos. Everyone's in it. They're coming to you with problems. They also have their individual weak links in metabolism, meaning that they're all different. The same stressor can affect different people different ways. And so you might think it sounds like a hormone problem. Someone comes in with thyroid symptoms. If I had more time, I'd go through them. Very traditionally reliable cluster of symptoms. And you might just go ahead and run a thyroid test at T4, T3, and so on. And you might luck out, and that's most of their problem, but not very likely anymore. People are too complex. They show up with multiple causal factors. So you might think, oh, it's the adrenal and sex hormones. And then you run that test. And that's not a bad sort of set of data to have. But what we know overall is that their hormones are out of balance. And that is both the result of metabolic chaos and the causal factor for other things that might break down in the body. That's why these arrows are pointed on both ends. Now this we came up with after a lot of, I say we, but me in the office. What do I really want to know about their hormones? I want to know if they're in a catabolic state versus anabolic state. The cortisol DHEA ratio, which we get from a very simple saliva test, is actually a better indicator for me on the general health and well-being of that person. And what happens if your cortisol to DHEA level is out of ratio is you're going to break down, your body's going to break down. And one of the first things to go is your immune system. Everyone knows you get sick. The more out of balance you are hormonally, the sicker you get, or the more likely and the longer it lasts and things like that. So we have measurements, not just the cortisol DHEA, secretory IgA, and guess what? They're in the same simple saliva test that anyone can do at home, cheaply, At least the test is cheap. Now, what you would measure and look for next would be this mucosal surface integrity issues. Someone's breaking down, there's a very logical progression. Now, what I'm going to give you today in the next 18 minutes is the tests, like zonulin. You'd look for zonulin there. It's a measurement for leaky gut. Then you'd want to look at inflammation. There's a measurement for that. We use the histamine DAO ratio. Those two are both done on the same, very simple, easy to do at home, finger stick blood test. Very, very simple thing. The dysbiosis is measured on a urine test. That's what happens next. You're out of whack here. You've got a dysbiosis, and then bigger bugs occur. There's simple tests again, like the indican. Doctors used to run that in their offices 50 years ago. None of them do anymore. It must be too easy or something. But it's so indicative. Now, you get other things going on around if you haven't noticed, these circles are labeled hormone, immune, digestive detoxification, HIDD, and then EN, plus oxidative stress. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. I just have to. But there's all of the tests that we would run follow a very logical progression when a person's body's breaking down. And this is what one of them looks like. We look at you see right there, the cortisol to DHEA-S ratio is way high, even though the cortisol is low. Now, you're not going to have time to study and read and learn everything right now. I'm just telling you, even though they have low cortisol because they've got that adrenal condition, they still have high cortisol to DHEA. This is a person whose body's breaking down. And when we show people this, I would have Elizabeth chime in, but I want to move fast here. When you show people this, they all of a sudden understand why they feel so bad, and they're very, very appreciative. They love that. Oh my God, nothing's wrong with me in here. Just try this, try this, try this. Now you're showing me what's wrong. How do I fix it? Well, we're not ready for that yet. We're going to go through. Here's the zonulin that's very high, meaning leaky gut, basically. The histamine's also very high, meaning there's agitation, irritation, stress, stuff going on. And then the DAO, which counteracts your histamine, is also very high. So the body's trying here to balance you out, but it can't do it. We know that because the histamine to DAO ratio is high. Now, again, this is not a spooky weirdo test. This is being run by many labs across the country. Doctors just aren't using it because it's not covered by insurance, unfortunately. These are still, after 25 years, considered research use only, which is just a bunch of stuff that the insurance companies come up with to hold it back. So I'm here to make sure it isn't held back. Another one, the metabolic wellness profile here with that indican dysbiosis. Here we have a congested liver, and we have too much oxidative stress. This person's not only breaking down, their whole body's rusting, if you want. Oxidative stress is why nails turn brown out in the rain. That's what's going on. So we actually have now healing opportunities. And then there's, of course, the stool test that we see other contributors to metabolic chaos on. Even if it's just out of balance, the different types of flora and microbiota. You guys are familiar with that term, of course. You're all buying probiotics, right? Well, this is where you can see if they're actually working or not, or doing some harm, throwing yet more out of balance. Same thing, you got the parasites, bacteria, funguses, and things like that. And then, of course, we'll just go on to the food sensitivities. So that's 5 simple labs that all of you could run without a physician's order. Matter of fact, if you're a practitioner, you can use these and the other 60 labs that we use in FDN, or Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So the science of the individual, as I have to move along here, comes from functional lab reports and interpreting the data as it applies to a unique individual. And I'll just tell you here that I spent 10 years in the last 25. Part of that time was spent with a lab as a clinical advisor. And so I would be on the phone. I just did it Friday mornings because I loved trying to educate physicians who were starting to get into functional medicine and some of these lab tests. And it was really amazing. I had a half hour with every person. I worked 4 hours a week for this lab. I had so much fun and learned a lot. One thing I learned that I didn't like was that the physicians would show up not prepared for the consultation. They get a half an hour with me, and I could teach them how functional medicine actually works. We'd get on the phone. I was calling their office, wait for them to get on the phone. Yeah, okay, what do I do? And I'd say, well, you're talking about the saliva test here, all the circadian rhythm, the cortisol to DHA ratio, anabolic state, not to mention all the sex hormones plus melatonin and SIG-A. You want me to tell you? And they're like, yeah, what do I give them? And how much, and for how long? And I would say, well, tell me a little bit about this person. Like, I would have on the lab male, female, and age. That's it. No names, no nothing. Tell me what her main complaints are. I don't know. I don't have her file in front of me. Just tell me what I should give her, how much, and for how long. And it was very kind of frustrating for me. I'd say, the truth is, it depends on who the person is. It depends on what their complaints are. I need to find a little bit more of you. And then they would start getting frustrated because they don't think that way. That we learned to call that treating the paper. So in our world, we don't treat the paper. And it's just amazing how much that's still going on, even in functional medicine, because they don't have time to look at all the different causal factors and how they're interacting with each other. They're still using the sounds like method. You're going in there, and if it's a snotty nose, you got insurance. They're not all enough into the right practice model and spending the amount of quality time. They haven't hired the right kind of health coaches yet that actually know how to look at this kind of lab work. My opinion only, okay? And so it really matters how you use the data and correlate it with the person for 2 reasons. One is you understand what they really need to do. And 2 is they understand what they really need to do so that they can take that control. It's just a remarkable different paradigm for what's going on. And so we fix what's hidden, that hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. It sounds like a mouthful. I guess it is, but it's actually quite easy to do because all it does is describe what everyone is doing anyway. You're already doing the things that will either work for you or work against you. So we only use all natural drug-free protocols, and they have an effect on every cell, tissue, organ, and system simultaneously at once. So what does that mean? Well, we're not practicing medicine without a license. We're actually just teaching people what's wrong, what they really need to fix, and how to fix it. So we treat nothing specifically, like that's what you need a license for. By the way, you know why you need a license to practice medicine is because it's very dangerous. You need a license to drive a car, fly a plane, all these different things. And that is also medical it kills 250,000 people a year in this country alone. Medical mistakes, 250,000 people a year. That's why you need a license. And that's what I want. Nothing to do with diagnosis and treatment and drugs and surgery and all that sort of stuff. Not that I don't respect it for what the good it can do. It's not what we do in the wellness business. We focus on the science of the individual, and we don't treat anything specifically. We treat everything non-specifically. We can have an effect on every cell. Now, it's the Dress for Health Success program, and I'm going to be done in 5 minutes and leave that to, you're going to get some who won and stuff like that. Okay, thanks. So the DRESS occurred to me in this 10-year period as I was giving people things to do at home. And I would tell Mrs. Smith, who had these problems, who was being a good patient of the doctors, and she was coming in and getting her visits. But I would tell them, it's what you do at home that's going to make the biggest difference. And here's some things you could do at home. And it just, over the years, formed into DRESS. I give them a summary sheet, and of course, we've written books about this and stuff. So diet has to be specific to a person. The right percentages of protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And which ones? Which vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants and trace elements and phytonutrients, these things. It all matters to an individual, and they're all different. So there's no one diet right for everybody, but there's one that's right for you, and there's one right for each of your clients. And we have the science of the individual to tell us what that might look like. And then, of course, rest goes without saying. But my dad told me, he said, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and advertise. Now, it doesn't really go that way. But it's more than just sleep. So that's why I say rest. You can rest in the day. You can rest your brain. You can rest your emotions. Of course, you can rest your body. And it's really important that even your soul gets some rest. And exercise, again, I could say, it goes without saying, but sitting's the new smoking, right? And you have to move your body. But is there one exercise program that's right for every individual? There isn't. You could only generalize and say, stretching, strengthening, balance, and things like that. But other than that, it needs to be for that person. There are certain exercise programs I can't keep up with, and there's some that couldn't keep up with mine. But the next S, the first S, DRE, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction is huge, because as we went through in that very first model I showed you the brain-body diagram, and we said, well, distress could be mental, emotional, perceived things. The way you look at the world actually affects your nervous system, everything going on in your body. So does the trauma. If I had one complaint that was something I deal with, it would be all the misuse of my body. I jokingly say it's very well used. And it's from motorcycles and football and surfing, from jiu-jitsu and skiing, and on and on. So you get the idea that physical stress and pain can be just as devastating as that your dad was mean to you or something, whatever it is mentally and emotionally. You hate your job, your kids are little rotten things. Not mine, but yours maybe. So this idea of stress being mental, emotional, physical, and the worst of all, remember where I started in this field, was with the environment. I studied the damage being done, mostly by our government poisoning us back in the day. They were dumping poison on roads to keep the dust down, and things like remarkable stuff. The amount of stuff that's been dumped in the ocean, and I'm not well, yeah, I am, but we've been poisoned a lot by people who are supposed to care about us, and lots of other types of stress, but we sort it out. You need to sort that out. Last but not least is supplementation. Now, I don't have my own supplement company, but I know a lot about them, and I've done a lot of recommending over the years and sorting that out too. There's a lot to sort out, but they can be used for first just substituting for what's missing from food. Food doesn't have the same stuff that my grandfather's food had in it. And then there's stimulation of your immune system if you want. Like you're getting on a plane to go to Austin. Take your zinc and some stuff, you know. You are also substituting, again, I said substituting for what's missing in food, supporting organs and like digestive system and stimulating. And it can be even be used for self-treatment if you do have a condition, like a real condition, parasites, bacteria, fungus, and viruses, these kind of things. So that's DRESS. And I want to conclude with just a couple more slides. The key takeaways is that the only way to fill that needs gap is to sort out metabolic chaos and apply the principles of health building that treat every cell, tissue, and organ at once. And when you start doing this, everybody just seems to get better, much better. So we had that little thing. Hopefully some of you took that quiz. Did anyone take the quiz, please? Yeah? Okay, so you have a microphone. You go ahead. You come up and get your prize at our booth. We're in booth 533 around the corner.
So our first winner is Susan Fitzgerald. Yay! Good job, Susan.
Good job.
Our second winner is Katie Smith Delos. Oh, great. Excellent, Katie. Our third winner is James Emerson. Yay. All right, James. And our fourth and final winner is Jill. So sorry, Jill. SCHUCHARDT. Yes.
Jill.
Excellent, Jill.
All right, good job. So you just won a blood sugar management course that we created. It's kind of a graduate level course over our regular course. It will help you a lot. I hope you put it to good use either for yourself or for your clients. But it's yours. Please don't share it. You won it, honestly. So, because you were here. And thank you very much for being here. We're in booth 533, which is just around the corner. I have an amazing staff there who can answer all these kinds of questions. There's fun and games, spin to win. We have stuff to give away and have fun. But what it says there is functional lab test training and all natural protocols. Guarantee real results for all your clients. Get certified now. But what I want to tell you is just like I made up my mind 25 years ago to be the last person someone needed to see to get to their health goals, you can be that person too. So thank you very much for having us. 3 minutes left for a question if someone has one. Does anyone have a question? And I appreciate it if you do or also if you don't. But one of the most common questions I get is, can I really do this? Like, I'm not a physician. How could I get access to these labs, learn how to interpret them, and then help others? Well, you would start, we have a course, as I said, but anyone can do this. The answer is yes, you can. So you can have this data, which is your data, at your fingertips. Everyone that goes through our course does the work on themselves. You'll run 5 labs on yourself. So yes, you can do it yourself. Anybody else with a question? Otherwise, I'm just going to bow out. And thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate it.